Round 2 of League One gets underway on Saturday at the Valley, where Charlton host Leyton Orient. There's going to be an abundance of important fixtures going through this weekend. We're going to go and review and preview every single one of them. We're going to look into past results. We're not going to take much notice of the EFL Cup. A lot of teams make changes, and I think it's sort of one of those where it doesn't always matter. But before we do that, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, turn on the notification bell and smash the like button. If you want to see specific fixtures, check the timestamps in the description. Go and watch the previews in whichever order you would like to watch them. But shall we get into it? So here we have it, League One at the Valley, Charlton Athletic versus Leyton Orient. I think this is going to be an interesting one. Now, obviously, these two sides have played their EFL Cup game. We're not going to take much attention into that, but we are going to look into their opening day. I have done a preview and a review of that opening day, so if you want to go and check those videos out, make sure you go ahead and do so. But Wigan Athletic lost to Charlton on the opening day in what was an important game for Nathan Jones to really show that he is developing this squad to where he wants it to be. They then went on to lose in the EFL Cup to Birmingham City. You can sort of ignore that one. And for me, I think a lot of results against Birmingham this season, you'll probably want to ignore. Now, you look at Leyton Orient picking up a 4-1 win in the Cup with a 2-1 loss to Bolton Wanderers. Now, I do believe these two sides will have fairly decent seasons. Obviously, Leyton Orient will probably have a bit more of a difficult season than they did last year. But I do think they'll have a good season. You look at Charlton Athletic as well. The way they've developed under new manager Nathan Jones over the course of, I think he came in at the back end of January. I think I've got that right. They've done so well, in my opinion. They've had really impressive spells. And I do think they're certainly going to be in with an opportunity towards the back end of this season. Obviously, there's still movement to be done for both clubs heading into the end of the transfer window. And who knows, if good deals become available, it could change the complexion of their seasons. Now, obviously, if we do go back to those results on opening day, obviously Charlton picking up a win. They're going to hope that they can continue that into this game as well. Obviously, at home, they're going to hope to get their first home victory of the season because obviously they failed to win versus Birmingham. But then you go on to Leyton Orient, who failed to win at home versus Bolton, won their second game versus Newport, obviously cup competition. Are they going to be able to win away from home and become away from home maestros? Because that's what happens sometimes in this division. You have clubs that can't buy a win at home but win away all the time. Then you have the opposite. So that's something which is going to be really, really interesting to look into over the course of this season. Now, obviously, if we talk about league tables, in my opinion, they don't really matter till between the 8th and 12th game. I think you can obviously make observations, but I think at this point, one game has been played. There's only been 3 points to play for everybody. There's not really a lot to look at. So we're not going to look at league tables in these videos until round 8. So if you want to look at the league table, you want to talk about that down in the comments, I'm happy to reply to you guys and see what you lot have to say. But I do think you've got to wait a bit. Let the league settle down a bit. Let the window close. And go from there. So yeah, let me know your thoughts and predictions on this one down in the comments. I think Nathan Jones has got a brilliant opportunity against Richie Wellens at Leyton Orient. On to game 2 then, Shrewsbury Town facing Peterborough United. People always go at me for the way I say Shrewsbury, whatever you want to say. It doesn't really matter. They lost on the opening day. They drew with Notts County in midweek. And Peterborough have lost both games as well. So this is a really, really important game for Peterborough and for Shrewsbury to get their first 3 points of the season. Now, obviously, as I've mentioned, the EFL Cup games aren't really that important. But as you know, you don't want to make losing a habit. And Peterborough have lost now 2 in a row. Oxford United 2-0, Huddersfield Town 2-0. Not scored. They've struggled. Obviously, Oxford are now a championship side, but it's one of those where it's something that needs to be addressed by Darren Ferguson quickly. Obviously, then go and look at Shrewsbury. That 3-3 draw to Notts County, it shows that they can concede goals. They lost 1-0 on the opening day to Stevenage. This is going to be a very interesting one for me because I think Peterborough United have got to sort of put down their stall this season, because I did think that their next man up mentality would put them sort of towards the top end of the table. Now, obviously losing on the opening day doesn't help that fact, but obviously they've got to progress this season. They've got players to replace and they've got gems to find, because they've lost Mason Clark, they've lost Johnson Clark-Harris, they've lost Ronnie Edwards, Joss Knight, all players who were massively impactful last season. Obviously, if you want to go back to sort of January time, they also lost Peter Chioso, who is now at Oxford. So it's going to be interesting to see how Peterborough United develop over the course of the season. And Shrewsbury Town, they also need to show their development, because if they make it 2 losses from 2 in the league, same with Peterborough, it then becomes a question of what has happened this summer, what more do they need. Obviously, all clubs still have work to do in the window, but it's one of those for me where you'd expect Peterborough to put up a better performance versus Huddersfield. You'd expect a better game versus Oxford, and you'd sort of expect Peterborough to win this one. Obviously, let me know your thoughts and predictions in the comments, but I think it could be a difficult day for Peterborough at the Crowd Meadow. And I'm really interested in this one because I think it could be massively impactful. Now, onto Blackpool versus Stockport. A 3 o'clock kickoff. You don't get many of those anymore. And it's going to be interesting. Obviously, Blackpool versus Stockport. Stockport are supposedly a good side in League One. Now, I think they've got a lot of development to do. And obviously, they did win on opening day. But they faced Cambridge United, who were a struggler last season. I think this one is a bit more of a challenge for them. Obviously, Crawley Town beat Blackpool 2-1 on the opening day. Blackpool then went and battered Burton 4-0 in the Cup. But Burton did have a red card, I think, for 80 minutes of the game. So there's a few question marks over that performance. And if you go and watch Burton's manager discuss the game, he thinks it would have been very, very different if they'd had 11 men on the pitch, which I think is quite obvious to suggest. Now, Stockport lost 6-1 to Blackburn in midweek in the EFL Cup. We're not going to have all EFL Cup fixtures and results because of when I'm recording this. I'm recording it on Wednesday morning, so let me know down in the comments how your team got on. Obviously, there's a lot of progression to go in this League One season. I think Blackpool should be in and around it, but obviously they've lost a lot of talent this off-season. Obviously, Karamako Dembele moving on at the end of his loan spell. Then obviously you look at Stockport. They made some decent signings, but are they going to be able to compete at the level consistently? That's something which is going to have to be addressed over the course of the season. Are Blackpool going to be able to have replaced that creativity they lost? Obviously, with a 4-0 win in midweek, you'd sort of say they can create chances, but obviously against 10 men, it's a bit of a different game. So obviously, let me know your thoughts and predictions down below. I do think this is going to be a tight one. I think Blackpool will edge it, but I do think it will be tight. Now, let's get on to the next fixture. Cambridge United face Crawley Town, and I was shocked by Crawley Town on opening day. And as much as I think they're missing a bit, but I think they have a lot. So it's sort of, I think they need more to survive, but it's one of those for me where we saw some crazy results last season with I think it was Carlisle who went down bottom of the pack. Saw some crazy results from them throughout the season. I think they beat Peterborough, Bolton and all of that, going on to a relegation campaign. And it's interesting for me to look into Crawley Town, because you obviously, if we discuss their manager Scott Lindsay for a moment, it's one of those where Scott Lindsay is now being linked with the potential Preston North End job after Ryan Lowe moved on. And that's interesting for me because I think he's really appreciated at Crawley. I think he's done really good things at Crawley Town, and there's obviously a lot more for him to do, potentially stay up, but can you turn down the opportunity to manage in the Championship with a side like Preston, who you could argue are probably a comfortable mid-table team? And that's a discussion which is going to happen over the course of this season. Now, I personally think that if the opportunity arises, I think Lindsay will go. But he started the season off well. 2 wins from 2. 2-1 versus Blackpool, 4-2 in the Cup versus Swindon. Whereas Cambridge on the opposite end of that have started with 2 defeats. 2-0 to Stockport and 2-1 to QPR. Now, obviously, QPR the division above, Swindon Town the division below. There's a lot of caveats within the performances. Obviously, if we was to go through team selections, it probably wouldn't be starting 11s for both sides. There's probably fans of both teams that could come for me in the comments and say, well, this player didn't play, he's our starting in this position, there's this player that didn't play, he should start in this position. And that's obviously something which you will obviously all know, and I think everybody knows that cup competitions, you don't normally play your best sides, especially early doors, because you've just started the season. You don't want to lose your big players to injuries. Obviously, if we discuss my club, Derby County, obviously Mendes Lang didn't start, Caden Jackson didn't start. Obviously, some of our main players did, but not all of them. And I think that's sort of a big discussion which needs to happen over the course of the season, and especially within those cup competitions. I do think this one between Cambridge and Crawley is going to be tight. I think Cambridge being at home may be able to get the edge on this one. It will be interesting to see who gets their first win. We will review it after the weekend is done. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Huddersfield face up against Stevenage. Now, Stevenage had a really interesting tie in midweek versus Norwich City, where they came away, unfortunately, with a 4-3 loss. But it was a very good performance by Stevenage to put 3 against a championship side. Obviously, changes in the Norwich side, but to put 3 in is massive in my opinion. It's a brilliant performance, and it will be interesting to see how they progress into this one. Now, obviously, they won opening day versus Shrewsbury Town, whichever one you want to say. I'll say both because that makes people happier. And Huddersfield have won both of their games, 3-0 versus Morecambe, 2-0 versus Peterborough United, and I think this is going to be a very interesting game. I'm not expecting Stevenage to be in and around the playoffs at all come the end of the season, but Huddersfield Town I'm expecting to be in that promotion fight automatically. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one goes, because I think Huddersfield Town have a lot of quality in their squad. I think they've got a really good League One manager. I think there's some players in their squad that probably shouldn't be playing at League One level, but ultimately the costs are too high for them to move up to most of the Championship teams that probably want them. And it's one of those for me where Stevenage have a good squad, a good core for League One. I think Harvey White has been excellent under new management, and it's going to be interesting to see how he progresses. Is he going to be able to have such a bright season that he ends up in talks for championship moves at the back end of this year, or is he going to be able to help Stevenage get that promotion? So obviously it's an interesting one. I do think Huddersfield Town will come out on top. But it's one of those for me where Stevenage have shown over the course of recent seasons that they have the ability to win games and they'll win dirty. And it'll be interesting to see how Huddersfield do deal with that this upcoming weekend. We go on now to Leyton City versus Barnsley. And I think this one is going to be an interesting one. Obviously, Barnsley, with all their problems, have made some changes off the pitch over the course of the off-season, but they still have a few issues to sort out. Leyton City, on the other hand, ended the season in scintillating form, just unable to get to the playoffs. And it's one of those for me where I do think this Leyton City side are going to be up there again this season. Obviously, I know you're going to look at that 2-1 defeat to Harrogate in midweek, but let's not take much notice of the Cup. They took a 3-2 win away at Burton Albion, and if I remember rightly, they weren't the better side. They didn't necessarily deserve to score 3 goals, but they did. Clinical nature always prevails. Now, Barnsley, on the other hand, they've lost and drew their opening 2 games. 1-1 with Wigan in midweek in the Cup, and 2-1 loss to Mansfield on the opening day. Now, Barnsley are struggling to get players through the door. They have made some signings, but there's a few players that they want that haven't yet come through. One of them being Mansfield Town's, is it Kyler Davis Dunn or something like that? I think that's his name. It's something along them lines. You can let me know down in the comments. But it's one of those where they've not hit the valuation, and until they hit the valuation, he won't be going anywhere. So it's going to be interesting to see who Barnsley end up with at the end of this window. We probably will do a bit of a post-transfer window review where we look through each of the squads, the signings that were made, the signings that went out, obviously, as well, and to see where these clubs obviously line up. Now, I do think Lincoln City have a really good manager, and obviously they ended really well last season. So it's going to be interesting to see how they progress as this season goes on. It's going to be interesting to see how Darryl Clark does with Burnley, because he's not started great, has he? So let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and let's get on to the next one. Nigel Clough faces a former club in Burton Albion with Mansfield Town. It's going to be interesting to see this one, because Burton Albion have made a ton of signings this summer, where Mansfield Town are still a bit limited in that department. Mansfield Town obviously waiting for that sort of loan market to properly open up, as Premier League loans filtered down to the Championship. Then you get Championship loans filtering down to League One and other Premier League loans that Championship clubs don't want. And I think Mansfield have started this season quite well. Obviously a 2-1 win versus Barnsley, the 1-1 draw in the EFL Cup versus Bolton. Obviously we're not taking much notice of the EFL Cup, but obviously still a good result. Burton Albion got battered by Blackpool with 10 men. Now you have to add that caveat of 10 men. Would it have been a different game? More than likely. But ultimately they had a player sent off, and you can't argue it, can you? So they'll be missing Sweeney for the upcoming game. I'm not sure how many games he actually misses, because I'm not entirely sure what the red card was for. I believe it was a handball. It might have been a professional foul, but he's suspended. That's the important part. And obviously they lost 3-2 to Burton Albion. No, 3-2 to Lincoln City on the opening day at home. So maybe this is good for Burton Albion to get away and pick up a win and sort of find that winning feeling again, because they haven't had it much over the course of the last 12 months. And obviously they haven't won this season yet. So they're going to be looking to find that. Nigel Clough is going to be looking to win again, go back-to-back in the league. And realistically, this Mansfield Town squad could probably surprise some people. And if they end up with some good Premier League loans as well, who knows where they could end up. So obviously this is going to be an interesting one. Burton Albion's million signings versus Mansfield Town's minimal signings. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think Nigel Clough will get one over on his old club though this weekend. You can obviously let me know your thoughts and predictions down in the comment section. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below or in this top corner to stay tuned for all of my latest Derby County and EFL Championship and League One match day previews and reviews as things go across this season. Let me know your thoughts down below based on this upcoming weekend. How do you think your team's going to do? Let me know your thoughts and predictions down below. Northampton Town face Exeter City. And this one is going to be an interesting one. Two sides who I think are going to be in and around that mid-table department come the end of the season. Exeter City have a habit of starting strong. In my opinion, from my experience of League One, that's what I've seen. Northampton, on the other hand, certainly haven't started strong this year. Now, Northampton lost 1-0 on the opening day to Bristol Rovers, took a 2-0 defeat in the Cup to Wycombe Wanderers, whereas Exeter City 1-1 with Walsall in midweek with a 1-0 win versus Rotherham on the opening day. Now, I really like the Northampton Town side. I think they went a bit under the radar last season, and I think that may cause them problems in this upcoming campaign, because I think a lot of teams didn't really take them seriously. They ended up finishing quite well in the campaign last year, and although at points they had nothing to play for, they picked up a good result towards the back end versus Derby County, and they picked up other good results along that season as well. Now, Exeter City, on the other hand, seem to start strong and sort of fade away. Then they get stronger and then they fade away again. They can't sort of keep their consistency for an entire season. And is that down to budgets? Is it down to squad size? Is it down to management? Obviously, Exeter fans, let me know down in the comments. But it is going to be an interesting one, this one, for me. I think Northampton Town are probably going to pick up a draw in this one versus Exeter. I think it's one of those games where you sort of two sides who are probably going to be in and around the same place towards the end of the season. So I think it'll be an evenly matched contest. Obviously, a lot can change over the course of the back end of the window. Who knows, Exeter City might bring in a striker who goes on to score 25 goals this season, and it completely changes the way they are. But as we're sitting here right now, they haven't done that. There's still a long way to go in the transfer window, as we know. And this weekend's fixtures are going to be very, very interesting. The battle of the points deductors then, with Reading and Wigan both having points deductions last season. I think they both come into this season clean, which is a brilliant start for both clubs. Obviously, Reading on that opening day picked up a brilliant 1-1 draw with Birmingham. Obviously, Birmingham favourites to win the league this year. And I think Reading put in a really good performance that day. It probably should have been a loss, with all due respect to Reading. But I think Ruben Selles managed it well, put in a really good performance on his Reading side, in my opinion. And Birmingham just weren't able to finish their dinner, which is the important part. Now, midweek, they drew 2-2 to Colchester, which obviously probably isn't the greatest result in the world, but they're scoring goals, they're conceding goals, but they're scoring them. They're going to be an interesting watch if that carries on over the course of the season. You obviously look at Wigan, drew 1-1 midweek with Barnsley, lost to Charlton Athletic. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one goes. With these two facing up against each other at the Select Car Leasing Stadium, which is Reading's home ground. It's going to be an interesting one. I think Reading have an abundance of good players, but it sounds as if some of them may be moving on. The likes of Femi Azaz, he seems to have interest. Obviously, there's been a lot of interest in Charlie Savage over the last 12 months. Will any of that reignite over the course of the start of this season? You obviously then talk about players like Sam Smith and Harvey Nibbs, massively impactful League One players who would probably argue that they would like to take the step up to the Championship. But we will see, obviously, how the window finishes for Selles and Reading over the next few weeks. Obviously, Wigan Athletic, they obviously still need bodies through the door. I think it's been confirmed that Charlie Hughes will be moving on. I think as I'm recording this video, I think he's supposed to be announced at his new club today, but it hasn't been announced as I'm recording this. So that's obviously a massive loss for them. Such a young player with such huge potential, and a player who I thought performed really, really well last season. Or maybe not the best centre-back in the league, but certainly some excellent performances for himself over the course of the season. But let me know your thoughts about that down in the comments section. Obviously, there's not a lot Wigan can do. They do need the money, and you can't really turn down those opportunities, especially for a youngster. It's a bit different if the player's 27, 28. You can sort of argue a little bit more, but it's one of those for me. They lose him now, and he could end up going on to do great things. Hopefully they've got a sell-on clause if he does, and we'll just have to see how that one obviously progresses. Rotherham United go into this one hoping to secure their first league victory of this season. Obviously, they made abundance of changes over the course of the off-season, and it didn't go to plan on the opening day as they lost 1-0 to Exeter City. In midweek, though, they did pick up their first victory of this season with a 2-1 win over Crewe Alexandra in the Cup. Now, if we go on to Bristol Rovers, just briefly, a 1-0 win on opening day versus Northampton, and a 2-0 defeat to Cardiff City in midweek in the Cup. Now, I think Rotherham United should have enough to beat Bristol Rovers easily. Now, the big question is Steve Evans going to throw another hissy fit? Because he did that at the weekend, wasn't very impressed with his defeat to Exeter City, failed to shake hands with Gary Caldwell, and to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure if he shook hands with the officials, which I think shows bad form, but we know what Steve Evans is like. He likes to rile people up. When are Rotherham going to get their first fist pumps of the season? Because he's got a habit of doing that, hasn't he, when they win? It's going to be interesting to see how this one goes. I think Rotherham probably have one of the best sides in this division. I think only really Birmingham and Huddersfield can really sort of argue with that. But I do think Rotherham are a great side. I think obviously the yo-yo team of the Championship and League One, but Steve Evans has come in and made an abundance of changes, and it doesn't quite seem to be working yet. Now, Bristol Rovers are obviously a decent side as well, and they're going to be hoping that they can get one over, because Matt Taylor, the manager at Bristol Rovers, is the former manager of Rotherham United, who you could probably argue drew a bit of the short straw. Didn't really get a valid opportunity, some would say. He's got the job at Bristol Rovers now. We'll be hoping to get one over on his former club, away from home at his former club as well. So that one's going to be interesting to watch. Obviously, let me know your thoughts and predictions down below. I know this sort of preview show is going to be a little bit shorter than the last one, but there's a lot to get through over the course of this season. And obviously at this point, there's not really a lot of games to look into. There's not settled squads yet. So we'll get into that later on down the line in the season. Wycombe Wanderers face Birmingham City, and what will aim to be Birmingham City's first win of the season. Now, Birmingham City have made a whole host of signings this summer, and you can't not talk about them in line with the best squad in the league. Now, I personally believe they probably won't settle properly until mid-September, October time, because of the amount of signings they've made, the changes they've made this off-season. But obviously, I do think they're going to be one of the favourites for promotion. They've picked up their first win of the season in midweek versus Charlton Athletic, but then so have Wycombe Wanderers with a 2-0 win over Northampton Town. Now, on the opening day, Birmingham didn't really take their chances. And to be fair, I think they showed this is League One. You don't take your chances in League One. That's just a common theme. There's not many clinical teams, and Birmingham City will be hoping they can find their clinical edge in this one versus Wycombe, who have scored 4 goals over the course of their first 2 games this season, but they've also conceded 3. So it's interesting to look at both sides of the coin. Birmingham only picking up 2 goals, conceding 1 clean sheet as well. Obviously only 2 games played so far, so there's still a long way to go. I think Birmingham City will have enough to win this game, but will they be able to put in a performance that is good enough to win? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. We're going to end this off talking about Bolton Wanderers versus Wrexham, the final game of the weekend. It's going to be interesting to see this one. I think obviously Wrexham started the season really well with that 3-2 win over Wycombe Wanderers. They then went on to lose 4-2 versus Sheffield United in what, for the first half, was a very competitive game. But obviously in the second half, Sheffield United showed their quality, ended up winning 4-2. It's going to be interesting to see this one with Wrexham, because I think they're finally starting to see they're not the big boys in this division anymore. Bolton Wanderers pipped them to the signing of McAtee, which was a player who was of interest to some Championship clubs along the course of this summer, but they didn't obviously make the right offers. And then obviously you look at Bolton Wanderers start, a 2-1 win versus Leyton Orient, 1-1 draw with Mansfield in the Cup. Certainly heading in the right direction for Ian Evatt, but are they going to be able to battle for promotion again this season? They've obviously lost some talent, they've also brought in some talent, and are still looking to do more in the transfer market. There's a lot to talk about. We'll probably talk more about squads come the end of the transfer window, but let me know who your danger men are for this game. I think Bolton Wanderers, you have to say Dion Charles, a wonderful player at this level. If you're going to go Wrexham, you want to keep Jack Marriott away from the penalty area, because if you give him the ball in the right areas in that box, he is going to score. So let me know your thoughts and predictions down below. I think Bolton Wanderers will come away with a win, and I do think they're going to have a really, really good season. Now, if you've got this far, you might as well hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. We've been through every single League One fixture. We'll be back on Monday for the League One review show, where we talk all about the results, go into depth with the data and things like that, and looking at the lineups and how each team did. Now, we're not going to look at the league table till about 8 games in, but let me know your thoughts on how things are shaping up at your club down in the comments. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and I'll catch you in the next video. Be sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.